Thank you. Thank you, Ed. What Ed didn't tell you is that we were classmates at Yale in the class of 1860. Welcome to this very historic building, and delighted to have you here. And I'm very excited about your activities today. As Ed mentioned, I've spent most of my adult lifetime in public service, and I suppose as a result I would want to start by trying to convince you to seriously consider a life in public service after you have completed your studies. And particularly as somebody who spent his life almost entirely in the field of foreign affairs, I would like to encourage you to think about a potential career in the Foreign Service of the United States of America. If you like history, if you like economics, if you like social sciences, if you like to travel, if you like to try to understand other languages and cultures, a career in the Foreign Service holds, I think, a great deal of interest for you. If you want to serve the American people abroad, if you want to help Americans overseas, our consular officials assist Americans wherever they travel or work abroad, if you want to promote United States exports to other countries, if you want to administer humanitarian assistance, if you want to help out in post-conflict or even in conflict situations. Ed mentioned that I had served as United States Ambassador to Iraq. We have a lot of Foreign Service officers working in conflict zones like that, whether it's Iraq or Afghanistan or elsewhere. Or if you want to help analyze diplomatic and political and economic situations in different countries and make recommendations back to Washington about what kinds of policies we ought to carry out towards those countries, then again, the Foreign Service is a career that you might wish to consider. But now you are here for the Model United Nations Conference, so let me talk just a little bit about the importance of the United Nations. I had the privilege of representing our president to the United Nations from 2001 to 2004, as was already mentioned. I believe the United Nations is a very important organization, and it is very important that the United States work through the United Nations to address various critical international issues whenever it can. I particularly enjoyed representing us on the Security Council, and I'm sure some of you have played the role of Security Council members in your run-up to this conference. And I thought that was a particularly exciting thing to do, whether we were debating the situation in Iraq or the International Criminal Court or the situation in one of the many, many different trouble spots that exist around the world, whether it was Sierra Leone in Africa or the situation in Liberia or the evolving situation in the country of Haiti. There was never a dull moment representing the United States on the UN Security Council. Of course, the UN has a lot of other important organizations as well. There's the General Assembly. There are the various humanitarian agencies, and certainly that's another area of career work that some of you might want to consider sometime, working for the UN High Commission for Refugees or the World Food Program, which provides food to people in need around the world. There are a number of others too. UNICEF, for example, that administers and takes care of children in need around the world. Indeed, I think that there are literally hundreds of exciting opportunities working for the UN humanitarian organizations. And of course, Americans are very welcome to work in those institutions. In fact, to mention a personal experience of mine, my eldest daughter had the opportunity to work for 2.5 years for the World Food Program. As a trainee, and she spent a year in Rome after graduating from college, and then she spent, that is where the headquarters of the World Food Program is, and then she was sent to India, the country of India, for 1.5 years, where she worked in one of their field offices. She's now back doing graduate studies in New York City, but she certainly found that a very rewarding experience. Now, one issue I know that comes up with audiences such as yours, and that is, what's the best way I can prepare for a career in public service, and particularly a career in foreign service? And I don't think there's any pat answer to that question, but one suggestion I would make for you to think about is to make an effort to learn as much as you can about foreign cultures and languages. Travel abroad, study abroad. Those are some of the best ways that younger people can prepare for a foreign service career. For example, many summers when I was a teenager, I undertook travel in different parts of the world. And then in my college years, I spent my junior year studying abroad, and more colleges today encourage study abroad for at least some part of your time at college, like perhaps a semester or two, studying and learning a foreign language. So these are some of the ways that I think you can prepare yourself well for a career in foreign affairs, should that be of interest to you. And then lastly, I would suggest, of course, nowadays maybe one goes about learning the news in different ways, but in the old days what we would say to people is, well, try to read a good newspaper every day. Now that's very hard discipline, and my experience with students and my recollection of my own experience as a student was that we didn't quite get around to reading the newspaper every day. But if you're interested in foreign affairs, it's a good idea to try and follow the news in one way or another, whether it's reading the newspaper or watching television, or of course nowadays perhaps the easiest way to go about it is just to search and surf the internet, which I do myself up here in my office on the 7th floor, and find it very useful and helpful. Now, I was told that you might like to ask me some questions about any situation or issue that you'd like to cover. I feel kind of badly if some of you haven't had breakfast, but I'd be happy to spend 10 or 15 minutes answering questions if you would like.